Sophie Cunningham hasn't spoken publicly about Caitlin Clark for months. Everyone thought the silence meant peace, but now she's finally breaking her silence. And what she just said, it's going to make the entire WNBA pick a side.
Just
Is
said, but
is Caitlin close? How's she coming along?
dude, I don't know. Everyone keeps asking, everyone's like, and I'm like, literally, she doesn't even know. Like, it's just
Yeah.
like a day by day legit type of thing. And so yeah, she's close, but like you also have to remember, like, she could be playing if it wasn't in the WNBA by now, but
For months, Sophie Cunningham said nothing. Not a word, not a tweet, not a single hint about what she really thought. The WNBA world moved on. Fans assumed the silence meant peace. They assumed that whatever happened between Cunningham and Caitlin Clark was over, buried, forgotten, old news. They were wrong. Because on a random Tuesday in late July 2025, Sophie Cunningham sat down for a podcast recording that would blow the roof off everything. And when she finally opened her mouth, the entire league stopped breathing. Here's what you need to understand before we get into what she said. Sophie Cunningham is not a player who hides her feelings. She never has. The Missouri native earned her black belt in Taekwondo at 6 years old. Yes, 6. And she's carried that same fighting energy onto every basketball court she's ever touched. But when she joined the Indiana Fever in early 2025 via a 4-team trade from the Phoenix Mercury, something shifted. Cunningham went from being known as Diana Taurasi's gritty teammate to becoming, well, something else entirely. She became Caitlin Clark's shadow. The narrative wrote itself overnight. Media outlets started calling her Clark's enforcer. Fans made edits. Memes exploded. And then came June 17, 2025, the night that changed everything. The Fever versus the Connecticut Sun, a regular season game that turned into absolute war. Here's what happened. 3 minutes in, J.C. Sheldon locked up with Clark. Physical, aggressive, the kind of defense that makes rookies cry in locker rooms. Then, in the third quarter, Sheldon poked Clark in the eye from behind. Not accidental, not basketball. Dirty. Clark hit the floor. The crowd gasped, and for a moment, everyone waited to see what would happen next. Marina Mabrey shoved Clark. Tina Charles confronted her. Technical fouls flew like confetti. But here's the part the cameras didn't fully capture, the part that matters most. Sophie Cunningham was watching from across the court, and she was angry. With under a minute left in the game, the Fever firmly in control, victory already secured, J.C. Sheldon broke away on a fast break. Most players would have let it go. The game was over. The message, if there was one, had already been sent. Not Sophie Cunningham. She wrapped both arms around Sheldon's neck and drove her face first into the floor. Chaos, shouting, pushing, 3 players ejected, including Cunningham. The referees spent 10 minutes sorting through the wreckage, and when it was all over, the internet lost its collective mind. But here's the part of the story nobody knew until Sophie Cunningham broke her silence. After the game, in the locker room, Caitlin Clark walked up to her, the rookie who had been shoved, poked, targeted, and bullied all night, the face of the league who everyone keeps saying needs to toughen up. And you know what Clark said? According to Cunningham herself, finally someone else. Cunningham's response? Dude, I got you. That moment, that tiny 2-second exchange in a quiet locker room was the spark. The Fever came together after that night. Cunningham says it changed everything for the team. But what she revealed next, that's the part that's going to make you question everything you thought you knew about Caitlin Clark, the WNBA, and the hidden war being waged against the league's biggest star. Because Sophie Cunningham didn't just break her silence about one game, she exposed the entire league. So what exactly did Sophie Cunningham say that has the entire WNBA buzzing? Let me take you inside that podcast recording. The host asked her a simple question, innocent even. Sophie, you've been in this league for years, you've played with legends, you've played against the best. How does Caitlin Clark compare to what you've seen before? Most players give the safe answer. She's great, she's talented, future of the league, blah, blah, blah. But Sophie Cunningham doesn't do safe. She leaned forward, paused, and then dropped a truth bomb that made the podcast host literally drop her pen. The league is not ready for what Caitlin Clark actually is, Cunningham said. And I don't mean her game. everyone sees her game. I mean, what she has to survive every single night, what she deals with, what other players do to her when the cameras aren't watching. The host went silent. You could hear a pin drop. Then Cunningham kept going. People think the physical stuff is bad. The shoves, the hard fouls, the eye pokes, that's nothing compared to what happens in the huddles, in the tunnels, in the private group chats, the stuff that never leaks. She paused again, looked directly into the camera, and said something that sent shockwaves through social media within minutes. There are players in this league who have openly said they want to hurt her, not stop her, hurt her. And nobody talks about it because, well, you know why. Why? That's the question everyone's been asking. Because here's the thing nobody wants to admit out loud. Caitlin Clark is the most famous women's basketball player on planet Earth. She sells out arenas that used to have empty seats. She brings TV ratings the WNBA has never seen. She has endorsement deals that some NBA players would kill for. And that has made her a target, not just from opponents on the court, from inside her own league. Think about it. You've got veteran players who've been grinding for a decade, barely making six figures, fighting for sponsorships that don't exist. Then a rookie walks in, a rookie, and suddenly she's on every commercial, every magazine cover, every late-night show. The resentment didn't start on the court. It started the moment she was drafted. Cunningham explained it bluntly. Some of these girls have been overlooked their whole careers. They've sacrificed everything. And now this young, white, straight-passing girl from Iowa comes in and gets everything handed to her? They're furious. They're not even hiding it anymore. She didn't say those players were right. She was just telling the truth about what's being said behind closed doors. And that truth? It's ugly. One veteran apparently texted the team group chat after a loss to the Fever, "Someone needs to take her out, not for a game, for a season." Cunningham refused to name names, but she didn't have to. The internet already started guessing. The backlash came instantly. Within hours, former players started posting. Fans flooded social media. Some praised Cunningham for being brave enough to say what everyone whispers. Others accused her of stirring up drama to stay relevant. But Cunningham wasn't done. She went even deeper. She started talking about the double standard, how Clark gets called unlikable for celebrating, while male players do the same thing and get called passionate, how Clark gets criticized for complaining to refs, while veterans do it every possession and nobody says a word. "It's jealousy," said Cunningham, "pure, simple jealousy. And jealousy makes people do crazy things." Then she revealed something that hasn't fully hit the media yet. According to Cunningham, after the June 17th game where Sheldon poked Clark in the eye, multiple players from other teams reached out to Sheldon not to condemn her, but to congratulate her. "You did what we've all wanted to do," one message allegedly read. Cunningham saw the screenshots herself. She said Clark knows about them too, and that knowledge, it changed something in the rookie. Caitlin doesn't trust anyone anymore. Not really. She's polite, she's professional, but she's watching everyone. She's learned that this league, it's not a sisterhood, not for her. It's a battlefield. That's the moment the podcast went viral, because Sophie Cunningham didn't just break her silence, she pulled back the curtain on a WNBA civil war that's been brewing for over a year. And now there's no going back. Players are being forced to pick sides. Fans are choosing teams based on who they believe. And Caitlin Clark, the woman at the center of it all, hasn't said a single word publicly about any of it. But according to Cunningham, her silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. The internet exploded. Within hours of that podcast dropping, Sophie Cunningham's name was trending worldwide. Not Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham. The enforcer had become the storyteller, and not everyone was happy about it. Former players came out swinging. Fans divided into warring camps, and the WNBA front office, they went completely silent, which, if you know anything about this league, is never a good sign. Let me read you some of the reactions. One former All-Star tweeted, and I'm paraphrasing here because the original was intense. "Sophie been in the league 5 minutes and suddenly she's the spokesperson? Sit down. You're not helping Caitlin. You're making it worse." That tweet got 15,000 likes in 2 hours. But here's where it gets really interesting, because Cunningham didn't just talk about jealousy and resentment. She went after the fans, too. And what she said, it's going to make some of you feel very seen, and some of you very uncomfortable.
"It literally pisses me off when people say she isn't the face of the league," Cunningham said on the podcast. "There's really good, well-known people in our league. I'm not discrediting them. We have a lot of badasses in our league. I'm all for that." She paused, leaned in, and then delivered the line that's now being printed on t-shirts. "But when people try to argue that she's not the face of our league, you're dumb as shit. You're literally dumb as fuck." The hosts lost it. One of them literally fell out of his chair laughing. But Cunningham wasn't smiling. She kept going, deeper, darker, into territory most players wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. "You've seen players in our league try and toughen up Caitlin," she explained. "Even when I wasn't on her team, I know the talks that Phoenix had in the locker room." Let that sink in. She was on the Mercury before the trade. She sat in those locker rooms. She heard those conversations. And now she's telling the world exactly what was said. "No, we're going to show her what the W really is," Cunningham recalled, doing an impression of the conversations she witnessed. "I get it to a certain extent. Every rookie coming into the league, that's how you're going to treat them." But then her voice changed, got quieter, more serious. "But there's just more for her. Now, being on her team, I'm like, what are people doing? It's just too much." And that right there, that's the part that scared the league office. Because Sophie Cunningham isn't some rookie with a hot take. She's a veteran, a black belt, a player who has been on both sides of the Caitlin Clark experience, first as an opponent, now as a teammate. And she's saying the targeting isn't normal. It's not just rookie hazing. It's something else entirely. Something worse. The backlash hit immediately. Stephen A. Smith weighed in on First Take, and his take surprised everyone. He didn't defend the veterans. He didn't defend Clark. Instead, he pointed a finger at something else entirely. "There's also resentment towards her because she instigates resentment towards her," Smith said. "The whole Angel Reese thing with her started because when Caitlin was giving it to everybody else, she was the one waving it in their face." He's talking about Caitlin's swagger, the stare-downs, the trash talk, the wave-offs, the things that made her a legend at Iowa. The things fans loved are now being used against her as proof that she's bringing it on herself. But here's the question nobody's answering honestly. If a male player did the exact same thing, would anyone call it instigating resentment? You already know the answer. Meanwhile, ESPN analyst Monica McNutt took a different angle. She pushed back on the idea that Clark is purely a victim, arguing that the conversation around her often ignores the players who built the league long before she arrived. "Who talks about the WNBA?" she asked pointedly. "With your platform, you could have been doing this 3 years ago if you wanted to." That was aimed at Stephen A. Smith, and it stung. Because she's right. Sort of. The WNBA didn't just appear when Caitlin Clark showed up. There were legends, there were battles, there were moments that deserved national attention but never got it. And now that a white, straight Midwestern rookie is the one finally breaking through, yeah, that stings for players who've been grinding in obscurity for a decade. But here's what McNutt didn't say. Clark didn't create that media bias. She's just benefiting from it. And resenting her for that is like resenting the sun for rising. Cunningham addressed this directly on the podcast. She talked about who Caitlin Clark actually is when the cameras aren't rolling, and what she revealed, it might change how you see the so-called face of the league. "She's just goofy," Cunningham said, smiling for the first time. "Everyone expects her to be a certain way, and she is on the court, but low-key, she's just a kid. She's 23 years old." She continued, "It's been fun to see where she's at in her career, but I promise you she's so chill. She doesn't care. She literally does not care." Does not care. Those 3 words are doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Because if Clark doesn't care about the hate, the jealousy, the hard fouls, the eye pokes, the whispers in locker rooms she's not invited into, then why does everyone else care so much? Maybe that's the real story. Maybe Sophie Cunningham didn't just break her silence about Caitlin Clark. Maybe she exposed something the WNBA didn't want anyone to see, that the person at the center of the storm is the only one not losing sleep over it. But if Clark isn't worried, why is the rest of the league in full-blown damage control? That's what we're getting into next.
While Sophie Cunningham was making headlines, 3 other players sat down for interviews that would either confirm or contradict everything she said. And what came out of their mouths?
Let's just say the WNBA will never be the same. The first one came from a veteran who's been in the league for over a decade. She refused to show her face on camera, but her voice? You could hear the exhaustion, the frustration, the pain of watching a rookie become a billionaire in 18 months while she's still fighting for a shoe deal. "I'm not going to pretend it's all love," she said, her voice cracking just slightly. "It's not. When someone comes in and gets everything you've worked 15 years for, yeah, that hurts. But hurting her back, that's not the answer. That's never the answer." She paused for a long time. You could hear her breathing, thinking, debating whether to say what came next. "But I understand why some girls are angry. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying I understand." That interview lasted 12 minutes. By the end, she was crying. Not for Caitlin Clark, for herself, for every player who bled for this league when nobody was watching. And that's the part of this story that gets lost in the drama, the genuine human pain of being left behind. The second interview was different. This player agreed to show her face but asked us to blur it. She's young, still building her brand, and she had a lot more to lose by speaking out. "Sophie's not wrong," she said carefully, choosing every word like it might explode, "but she's also not right. She's telling her truth, but her truth isn't everyone's truth." She shifted in her seat, glanced off camera at someone we couldn't see, then continued. "Some of us have been welcoming to Caitlin. Some of us have tried. But when every conversation becomes about her, when every camera follows her, when every check is signed by her—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. "It's hard," she whispered. "It's just hard." This interview lasted 8 minutes. She never once denied that jealousy exists in the league, but she made something else clear. The jealousy isn't about Caitlin Clark the person, it's about Caitlin Clark the phenomenon, and those are two completely different things. The third interview was the one nobody expected. A former all-star, a legend, someone who has absolutely nothing to prove and nothing to gain by stirring up drama. And she went on camera, full face, full name, full honesty, and said what no one else had the courage to say. "I've heard the conversation Sophie is talking about," I admitted. "I've been in the rooms, I've seen the group chats, and she's not exaggerating." The host's jaw literally dropped. There are players in this league who have said things about Caitlin Clark that would end their careers if those recordings ever got out, and they know it. That's why they only say it behind closed doors. She leaned forward, lowered her voice like she was about to reveal a state secret. But here's what nobody's talking about. The people who hate Caitlin the most, they're not the ones who've lost to her. They're the ones who've never even played her. They hate the idea of her, the attention, the money, the fame. And that kind of hate, that's way more dangerous than anything that happens on the court. The interview ended there. The legend stood up, shook the host's hand, and walked out without another word. 3 interviews, 3 different perspectives, 3 pieces of a puzzle that still doesn't have a clear picture. But one thing is now undeniable. Sophie Cunningham didn't imagine this. She didn't exaggerate it. She just had the guts to say it out loud while everyone else was whispering in the dark. And now the whispers are becoming screams.
So where does this leave us? Sophie Cunningham broke her silence. She named the jealousy, the resentment, the behind-closed-doors conversations that most players are too scared to acknowledge. She called out the fans who refuse to see Caitlin Clark for what she is, the undeniable face of the league. And she did it all with the same fire she brings to the court every single night. But here's the question nobody's answering. What happens now? Because here's the thing about speaking truth in the WNBA. There are consequences. Always. Cunningham knew that when she sat down for that podcast. She knew her phone would blow up. She knew former players would come for her. She knew the league office would be less than thrilled. She did it anyway. And that tells you everything you need to know about Sophie Cunningham. She's not looking for popularity. She's not looking for sponsorship deals. She's looking out for her teammate, her friend,
The 23-year-old kid in sweats and a sweatshirt who just wants to play basketball, but can't because every night someone's trying to send her a message. Caitlin Clark still hasn't spoken publicly about any of this. Not one word, not one tweet, not one subtle Instagram story. But according to Cunningham, that silence is louder than any interview could ever be. She doesn't need to defend herself, Cunningham said near the end of the podcast. Her game defends her. Her numbers defend her. The sold-out arenas defend her. What's anyone going to say that changes any of that? Nothing. That's the answer. Nothing changes it. Because Caitlin Clark isn't just surviving the WNBA. She's thriving in it. Despite the eye pokes, despite the hard fouls, despite the group chats wishing she'd get hurt, despite everything, she's still dropping 30-point triple-doubles. She's still selling out every arena she walks into. She's still the most talked-about player in women's basketball history. And that's the part that really drives her haters crazy. Not that she's good, but that she's good and she doesn't care what they think. Sophie Cunningham's interview didn't start a war. It just pulled back the curtain on one that's been raging since the moment Caitlin Clark declared for the draft. The jealousy was always there. The resentment was always there. The whispers were always there. Cunningham just handed everyone a microphone. Now the question is, what are you going to do with the truth? Are you going to keep pretending the WNBA is one big happy sisterhood? Are you going to keep pretending the hatred for Clark is just competitive fire? Are you going to keep scrolling past the obvious because it's easier than admitting something uncomfortable? Or are you going to watch closely because this story is far from over? The next time Cunningham and Clark step on the court together, every opponent will know exactly what's been said. Every hard foul will feel different. Every whispered comment in a huddle will carry new weight. Sophie Cunningham didn't just break her silence. She drew a line in the sand. And now everyone has to choose a side. So here's what I need from you. If you made it to the end of this video, you're not a casual fan. You're someone who actually cares about what's happening in the WNBA. The real story, not the highlight reels, not the sanitized press conferences. The truth. And the truth is, this league is changing faster than anyone can keep up. New rivalries, new controversies, new secrets waiting to be exposed. Don't miss what comes next. Subscribe. Hit that bell icon, because the next time someone breaks their silence, you're going to want to be here before the algorithm figures it out. Sophie Cunningham spoke. Caitlin Clark stayed quiet. But in the WNBA, silence never lasts forever. I'll see you in the next one.